From starting the war that changed the entire history of Westeros,
She says Jon Arryn was murdered.
to carrying out one of the greatest betrayals in Game of Thrones history.
I did warn you not to trust me.
Today, we are going to break down every single time Littlefinger outsmarted everyone. Starting with number 1, the war, the Jon Arryn plot. We have the murder that started everything in Game of Thrones. While the official story in King's Landing was that Jon Arryn died from a sudden fever, men like Ned Stark and Stannis Baratheon were immediately suspicious. They knew Jon was a strong man who wouldn't just drop dead without a reason. But while they were busy looking for clues, they completely missed the man standing right next to them, because Littlefinger didn't just wait for a war to start. He personally lit the fuse while staying so far in the shadows that no one even thought to look his way. The setup for this move was years in the making. Littlefinger understood a hard truth. As long as there was peace and stability, a man of his low birth would never truly rise. In order to climb the ranks of power, he needed the political world to collapse, and Jon Arryn was the glue holding it all together. If Jon died, the stability of the realm would die with him. But Littlefinger was too smart to get his own hands dirty. Instead, he used the one person who trusted him completely, Lysa Arryn. Lysa had been in love with Petyr since they were children, and he used that obsession to turn her into a weapon. He convinced her that her husband Jon was planning to send their young son away to be fostered by Stannis Baratheon. And for a mother as protective and unstable as Lysa, this was the ultimate fear.
I lied for you, I killed for you!
Littlefinger told her that the only way to keep her son safe was to kill Jon Arryn. So, he provided her with a rare and deadly poison called the Tears of Lys, which leaves no trace and makes a death look natural. Lysa, believing she was doing this for love and family, slipped the poison into her husband's wine. What wife would do the things I've done for you? What wife would trust you the way I trusted you? When you gave me those drops and told me to pour them into Jon's wine, my husband's wine, and you told me to write a letter to Cat telling her it was the Lannisters, a storm of swords. With Jon Arryn dead, the king was forced to find a new hand, which drew Ned Stark out of the safety of the north. But Littlefinger wasn't finished yet. He wanted the two most powerful houses in Westeros, the Lannisters and the Starks, to be enemies in order to instigate enough political unrest for him to slip through the cracks. His plan was to make the Starks believe the Lannisters were murderers, forcing Ned Stark to leave Winterfell and enter a nest of vipers, where he was completely outmatched. So he had Lysa send a secret letter to her sister, Catelyn Stark, written in a code only she could understand, and claimed that Jon Arryn hadn't died of natural causes, but was instead murdered by the Lannisters.
She's fled the capital. She says Jon Arryn was murdered by the Lannisters. She says the king is in danger.
By using Lysa, Littlefinger accomplished 3 things at once. First, he removed a powerful man who might have stood in his way. Second, he gained a permanent inside person in the Vale. Third, and most importantly, he planted a seed of suspicion in Ned Stark's mind that made a peaceful transition of power impossible. When Ned arrived in King's Landing, he wasn't looking for a friend in the Lannisters, he was looking for his friend's killer. Littlefinger had successfully turned the two most powerful houses in Westeros against each other before the first episode was even over. Number 2, framing Tyrion, the Valyrian dagger. While the letter to Catelyn planted the seed of doubt, it was a physical piece of evidence that Littlefinger would eventually use to trap the Starks in a war they just could not win. After successfully bringing Ned Stark to King's Landing, Littlefinger needed to ensure that the tension between the Starks and the Lannisters didn't just stay a political disagreement, but instead bloomed into a full-on blood feud. He found his opportunity when an assassin tried to kill Bran Stark in his bed using a very distinctive Valyrian steel dagger. After Bran Stark was pushed from a tower, a hired killer tried to finish the job while the boy was in a coma, using that distinctive Valyrian steel dagger. This wasn't a common weapon. It was a piece of royalty that should never have been in the hands of a common thug.
It's a mercy. He's dead already.
Catelyn Stark arrived in the capital in secret to find out who sent the killer. Littlefinger didn't just help her, he used her grief to set a trap for her. The genius of this move was how Littlefinger took a piece of evidence he had nothing to do with and instantly turned it into a weapon against the smartest man in the Lannister family, Tyrion. When Catelyn showed him the blade, Littlefinger didn't hesitate. He told her a lie so specific and so bold that she had no reason to doubt him. He claimed that he once owned the dagger himself, but lost it in a bet during a tournament.
Well, this is an historic day. Something you don't know that I do.
I lost this dagger.
To whom?
Tyrion Lannister.
This was a calculated move on Littlefinger's part. Throwing a man who is not only disliked by his family, but also by the people was an easy way to throw the blame at Tyrion. This ensured that if the Starks acted on the information, the Lannisters would be forced to respond. He knew Tywin Lannister's pride wouldn't allow one of his children to be kidnapped without a massive retaliation.
If another house can seize one of our own and hold him captive with impunity, we are no longer a house to be feared.
Littlefinger even controlled the number of eyes that saw this interaction. By meeting Catelyn in one of his brothels and controlling the flow of information, Petyr stayed one step ahead and ensured no information leaked.
No one will come looking for you here, isn't that what you wanted? I'm truly sorry about the locale.
The outcome was exactly what Littlefinger wanted. On her way back to Winterfell, Catelyn spotted Tyrion at an inn and, acting on Littlefinger's lie, had him arrested. This act of justice...
This man came into my house as a guest, and there conspired to murder my son, a boy of 10.
...successfully turned a failed assassination attempt into a full-scale war. Number 3. The Betrayal of Ned Stark. While the previous schemes were about setting the stage from a distance, the Betrayal of Ned Stark was a masterclass in politics. Littlefinger didn't just trick Ned, he spent weeks setting up the pieces to make him fail and making sure that when the trap finally snapped shut, Ned would have nowhere else to run.
Lord Baelish, perhaps I was wrong to distrust you.
Distrusting me was the wisest thing you've done since you climbed off your horse.
The setup for this betrayal began the second Ned Stark set foot in King's Landing. Ned was a man of honor and honesty who lived by a code that simply didn't exist in a city full of liars. Littlefinger saw this immediately and realized that Ned's greatest strength was also his biggest weakness. He shared his secrets, helped him investigate Jon Arryn's death, and even guided him to the discovery that Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were not actually King Robert's children.
Your brother? Or your lover?
When King Robert died, Ned faced a choice. Support Joffrey as king, or try to put the rightful heir, Stannis Baratheon, on the throne. Littlefinger gave Ned a chance to survive. He suggested a plan to take control of the city and rule as regent, effectively ignoring Stannis and keeping the peace. But Ned, blinded by honor, refused. This was the moment Littlefinger knew Ned had to be removed. An honorable man in power is a man Littlefinger cannot control.
You know what you want me to do, but it's not honorable, so the words stick in your throat.
Whose peace do the gold cloaks protect? Who do they follow? The man who pays them.
Ned needed the City Watch, the Gold Cloaks, to back him up if he was going to arrest Cersei and Joffrey. Littlefinger promised Ned that he would use his influence and gold to buy their loyalty. He assured Ned that the city's soldiers would follow the Hand's command, and Ned trusted him.
All is accomplished, the City Watch is yours.
The outcome was the most brutal betrayal in the history of the show. When Ned walked into the throne room with his small group of guards, thinking he had the law and the soldiers on his side, the trap was sprung. Ned ordered the City Watch to take the Queen and her children into custody. Instead, the Gold Cloaks turned their spears on Ned's men, slaughtering them in seconds. As the room fell into chaos, Littlefinger stepped behind Ned and put a blade to his chin.
I did warn you not to trust me.
By tricking Ned Stark, he ensured that the Lannisters would take control of the Iron Throne, knowing that their rule would be unstable and lead to even more war. He outsmarted the Queen by making her dependent on his loyalty, and he fooled Ned by using his own honor as a blindfold. It was the ultimate proof of Littlefinger's philosophy. In the Game of Thrones, the man who thinks he's playing for justice is the first one to lose his head. Number 4, the Harrenhal promotion. In Westeros, social class is everything. No matter how much money Littlefinger made or how many secrets he held, to the highborn lords, he was still just a minor lord from a family of no consequence, and that meant he could never marry into the great families. To reach the next level of his plan, he needed a title that carried weight. The opportunity came after Renly Baratheon's death. After Joffrey Baratheon took the throne, the alliance with the North was gone, and the Lannisters needed the support of the wealthy House Tyrell to stay on the throne. Tywin Lannister needed someone clever enough to convince the Tyrells to switch sides and marry Margaery to King Joffrey. Littlefinger volunteered for the mission. knowing exactly what he wanted in return. On paper, Harrenhal was a disaster. It was the largest castle in the Seven Kingdoms, but it was a melted ruin that was impossible to garrison and was famously cursed to bring death to anyone who owned it. The Lannisters were happy to give it to Littlefinger because, to them, they were giving away a haunted liability that they didn't want to manage anyway. But Littlefinger wasn't looking for a place to live, he was looking for the title of Lord Paramount of the Trident. By owning Harrenhal, he officially became a Great Lord. This changed his legal status in the eyes of the entire realm. He was no longer Littlefinger the Accountant, he was Lord Baelish of Harrenhal. This promotion was the ultimate setup for his move on the Vale. Without the status of a Great Lord, he would never have been allowed to marry Lysa Arryn. The Lords of the Vale would have seen a marriage between the highborn widow and a minor tax collector as an insult. By working with Tywin and the Council to give him Harrenhal, he bypassed centuries of social tradition. Number 5. The Purple Wedding, Joffrey's death. Moving on, we have perhaps the most dangerous move Littlefinger ever made.
My son, your king. Take him. Take him!
Up until this point, he had been manipulating the edges of the board by moving money, lieutenants, and lords. But with the Purple Wedding, he reached into the very heart of the Iron Throne and removed the king himself. He outsmarted the Lannisters, the Tyrells, and even the Varys-led spy network by turning a public celebration into a private execution. The setup for this was a masterpiece of coordination between himself and Olenna Tyrell. Littlefinger understood that as long as Joffrey was king, the realm would remain a volatile mess that he couldn't fully control, and that Olenna Tyrell would never want her granddaughter Marjorie to get married to a sadistic monster. Littlefinger saw his chance and approached Olenna with a silent partnership.
But I do know. You don't think I'd let you marry that beast, do you?
And to make sure that no one suspected him, he used Sansa Stark. He had Ser Dontos, a disgraced knight who owed Petyr his life, give Sansa a beautiful necklace as a family heirloom.
It belonged to my mother and her mother before her.
Sansa wore it to the wedding, never realizing that one of the purple stones was actually a container for a deadly poison known as the Strangler. During the wedding feast, amidst the chaos of the purple wedding spectacle, Olenna Tyrell leaned over to Sansa. She adjusted Sansa's hair, seemingly fixing a loose strand. But in that split second, she plucked a stone from Sansa's jewelry. While Joffrey was busy mocking Tyrion and drinking his wine, she slipped the poison into his cup. Within minutes, the king was dead on the floor of his own wedding.
I haven't had the opportunity to tell you how sorry I was to hear about your brother. War is war, but killing a man at a wedding, horrid.
The genius of Littlefinger's plan wasn't just the murder, it was the exit strategy. While the entire city was in a panic and Cersei was screaming for Tyrion's head, Littlefinger's men were already moving. Ser Dontos whisked Sansa away to a waiting boat in the harbor where Littlefinger was waiting for her.
Come with me now.
By killing the king and rescuing Sansa, Littlefinger secured the most valuable prize in the game, the key to the North. He didn't save her out of the kindness of his heart, but instead, he effectively took control of the claim to Winterfell. With Sansa by his side, he now held a massive bargaining chip that could bring the entire North to heel whenever he chose to play it. Not only did Littlefinger outsmart Cersei by murdering her son right in front of her, but he also tricked the Tyrells by letting them take the physical risk of the poison, while he walked away with the real prize, the last surviving Stark. He had successfully decapitated the royal family and vanished into the night before anyone even realized he had left the city. Number 6. Taking the Vale and manipulating the Mockingbird trial. After fleeing from King's Landing with Sansa in his possession and the title of Lord of Harrenhal in his pocket, Littlefinger was finally ready to cash in on the long-term investment he had made with Lysa Arryn.
You're safe with me, sailing home.
Most people saw the Vale as an impenetrable fortress that stayed neutral during the war, but Littlefinger, he saw it as his future base of operations.
If you want to get to the Eyrie, you need to go through the bloody gate.
The move began with a wedding. Littlefinger arrived at the Eyrie and married Lysa, officially becoming the Lord Protector of the Vale. However, the situation quickly became dangerous. Lysa was mentally unstable and pathologically jealous of anyone who came near Littlefinger. When she caught Petyr kissing Sansa in the snow, she spiraled into a murderous rage. She summoned Sansa to the High Hall and held her over the moon door.
My father, my husband, my sister, they all stood between us and now they're all dead.
Littlefinger walked into the room and did what he does best. He de-escalated the situation by playing on Lysa's emotions. He walked towards her, calmed her down, and made her believe that he was on her side. But as soon as Sansa was safe, he revealed his true face. He told Lysa he had only ever loved one woman in his entire life. For a second, Lysa smiled, thinking he meant her.
I have only loved one woman my entire life. Your sister.
Usually murdering a great lady in her own home would be the end of a man's career. The Lords of the Vale were immediately suspicious and called for a trial. They knew Littlefinger was a foreign schemer from King's Landing, and they were looking for any excuse to execute him. Littlefinger stood before them, appearing vulnerable and outmatched. This was the Mockingbird trial, and it was a masterpiece of coaching.
She was an odd fish, everyone knew that. But suicide, she adored that boy of hers. I don't see her abandoning him, not by choice.
So the Lords of the Vale called Sansa, who is disguised as Petyr Baelish's niece, to explain her account of the incident. Sansa wept as she told the Lords that Lysa had committed suicide out of grief and jealousy. By mixing the truth of her identity with the lie of the murder, Sansa became the ultimate witness.
When Lord Baelish tried to calm her, she struck him. She said she didn't want to live anymore. She stood on the edge of that moon door. She stepped through those doors and she was...
The outcome was a total reversal of fortune. The Lords went from wanting to hang Littlefinger to apologizing to him. They felt protective of Sansa, and by extension, they began to trust Petyr as her guardian. Number 7, the marriage to Ramsay Bolton. By this point in the story, the Boltons had seized control of the North after the Red Wedding, but their grip on power was weak. The Northern Lords hated him, and the Lannisters only supported them as long as Tywin was alive. Littlefinger saw this instability as a perfect opening. He played the Boltons and the Lannisters by using Sansa Stark as a political gift that allowed him to play both sides of a looming war.
We don't have enough men to hold the North if the other houses rise up against us.
The setup for this move was a massive gamble. Littlefinger convinced Sansa that the only way to truly stop being a victim was to go back to Winterfell and take it from the inside. He explained to her that marrying Ramsay Bolton, the son of the man who betrayed her family, was a strategic necessity. While it seemed cruel, Littlefinger's goal wasn't just to find Sansa a husband, it was to create a situation where he couldn't lose, no matter who won the war for control of the North.
I've been a bystander to tragedy from the day they executed your father. Stop being a bystander, do you hear me? Stop running.
The context of this manipulation involved a dangerous double-cross. Littlefinger traveled to King's Landing to meet with Cersei Lannister and told her that the Boltons had found Sansa and were planning to marry her to Ramsay to secure their hold on the North without the Crown's permission. This made Cersei furious at the Boltons, making them look like traitors. At the same time, Littlefinger offered to lead the Knights of the Vale north to punish the Boltons and restore the King's peace. In exchange, he simply asks,
"Name me Warden of the North."
The outcome was a win-win for Littlefinger. If the Boltons defeated Stannis Baratheon, who was marching on Winterfell, the Boltons would be weakened and hated. If the Boltons lost, Littlefinger could rescue Sansa and claim he was a loyal Stark ally all along. By marrying Sansa to Ramsay, he successfully gifted her to his enemies, while simultaneously plotting their destruction. He convinced Roose Bolton that he was getting a Stark to legitimize his rule, and Cersei assumed he was her loyal servant clearing up a northern mess. In reality, Littlefinger was positioning himself to be the man who owned the North. Number 8, the Battle of the Bastards. In every war, the person who wins isn't always the one who fights the hardest. It's the person who joins the fight at the exact moment the enemy is exhausted. This was Littlefinger's strategy for the Battle of the Bastards. The setup for this move involved a calculated silence. Jon Snow and Sansa were traveling across the North, trying to scrape together an army to take back Winterfell. They were outnumbered and desperate. Sansa was all too aware they didn't have enough men, so she finally swallowed her pride and wrote a secret letter to Littlefinger, asking for the help of the Knights of the Vale. Littlefinger received the letter, but he didn't rush to their side immediately. He knew that if he arrived too early, he would just be one of many allies. He wanted to be the only ally that mattered. He allowed Jon Snow to lead his small, ragtag army into a direct confrontation with Ramsay Bolton's superior forces.
I rode north with the Knights of the Vale to come to your aid. They're encamped at Moat Caelan as we speak.
The context of the battle was a nightmare for the Starks. Jon's army was trapped in a wall of Bolton shields and piles of bodies, and was minutes away from being completely wiped out. All hope seemed lost for Jon Snow and the Stark armies. The horns were rung. The outcome was a total military victory, but more importantly, a total political victory for Littlefinger. By waiting until the very last second to save the day, he didn't just help them win, he made them realize that without him, they would all be dead.
I'm faced with a decision. I close my eyes and see the same picture on the Iron Throne, and you by my side.
He outmaneuvered Ramsay Bolton, who never expected a southern army to appear in the middle of a northern civil war, and Jon Snow, who realized too late that he was now politically indebted to a man he did not trust. Littlefinger had successfully turned a desperate plea for help into a permanent seat at the table in Winterfell, making him the hero of a battle he didn't even have to break a sweat to win. Number 9. Playing the two queens. Cersei versus Margaery. While Littlefinger was busy consolidating power in the Vale and the North, he never took his eyes off King's Landing. He understood that the best way to keep the Iron Throne from focusing on his own endeavors was to keep it buried in chaos, and he did so by masterfully manipulating the two most powerful women in Westeros, Cersei Lannister and Margaery Tyrell. The setup for this was a classic divide and conquer strategy. Littlefinger was aware that Cersei was deeply insecure about her fading control over her son, Tommen, and that Margaery was a master of public relations who was slowly winning the hearts of the people and the loyalty of the young king. Instead of picking a side, Littlefinger became a double agent, promising both women just enough information to make them dangerous to one another.
The faith and the crown are the two pillars that hold up this world. One collapses, so does the other.
Littlefinger had his birds everywhere, but he also used his personal relationship with Cersei to feed her paranoia. He knew about the Tyrell family's secrets, specifically Loras Tyrell's private life, and he ensured that this information reached Cersei's ears at the exact moment she was looking for a way to strike back at Margaery.
He took a liking to me. He summoned me to his chamber the first day we met.
So he gave Cersei the evidence she needed to arrest Loras through the High Sparrow and the Faith Militant. Littlefinger wasn't just helping the Lannisters, instead he was setting a trap for both houses simultaneously. The Tyrells would never take the arrest of their heir lightly, and even understood that Cersei's use of religious fanatics would eventually spiral out of her control.
The same kind I gave Cersei, a handsome young man.
The outcome was a total collapse of the Lannister-Tyrell alliance. While the two queens were locked in a bitter struggle for dominance, one using the law and the other using the church, Littlefinger was miles away, building his own strength in the north. He'd effectively created a fire in the south that required all of the crown's attention. By the time the dust settled and the Sept of Baelor was destroyed, Littlefinger had successfully turned the center of power in Westeros into a graveyard of alliances, all while looking like a loyal servant who was just trying to help, obviously. Number 10. The Revenge of the Starks. But in the end, even the most clever and cunning people run out of luck.
You're sure this is the only copy in Winterfell?
Yes, my lord.
Lady Stark thanks you for your service.
The scene of his downfall started with a classic Littlefinger setup. When he saw that Arya and Sansa had reunited at Winterfell, he immediately viewed their bond as a threat to his influence. So he decided to break them apart by planting a letter that Sansa had been forced to write years ago in King's Landing. It was a letter that made her look like a traitor to their father, Ned. He watched from the shadows as Arya found it, expecting the two sisters to tear each other apart. And even as he sat down with Sansa for one last lesson, he suggested that Arya's real goal was to murder her so she could become the Lady of Winterfell. Littlefinger's goal was simple. He wanted a trial where Arya would be found guilty and executed, leaving Sansa with no one to turn to but him.
So tell me, what's the worst thing she could want?
She could want me dead. Because she thinks I wronged my family.
However, the outcome was a complete reversal of every move he had ever made. The sisters had been talking behind the scenes, and with Bran's visions to fill in the blanks, they had finally seen the invisible man who was pulling all the strings.
You stand accused of murder. You stand accused of treason. How do you answer these charges, Lord Baelish?
Okay, the Bran thing is kind of cheating. The man who always had a witty comeback was speechless. Littlefinger tried to talk his way out of it, But Bran started quoting his own private conversations back to him, and Sansa threw his own lessons in his face.
Sometimes when I'm trying to understand a person's motives, I play a little game. What's the worst reason you have for turning me against my sister? That's what you've always done. Turn family against family, turn sister against sister. That's what you did to our mother and Aunt Lysa, and that's what you tried to do to us.
The man who had orchestrated the deaths of kings and started world wars was reduced to begging on his knees. In a final bit of poetic justice, Arya executed him using the very same Valyrian steel dagger that he had used to frame Tyrion and start the war in the first place. Littlefinger's ladder finally broke, and he was outsmarted by the very children he thought were just pieces on his board.
Thank you for all your many lessons, Lord Baelish. I will never forget them.
And that was our list of every time Petyr Baelish outsmarted everyone in Game of Thrones. Make sure to check out this video right here. Look, right there, on the right. You can't miss it. See you next time.